We're staying in Florida. Scott Forbes, you're up with Andy RIISE.
Thank you. And Andy, thank you for all your sacrifices you made during your service. I know you probably hate to hear that, but I still have to say it. And also, I saw you for a moment there when John came on, not showing his face, ready to jump through those flames and pull out whoever that was talking to you. Like it was written all over your face. But
I see you're a vet too. Thank you for your service. I see you're an aviator up there behind your shoulder.
Oh yeah, Blackhawk guy.
Awesome.
So I've always felt that something that bonded us in the military was that mutual suffering that we all went through. The ultimate of that was being when we went to combat, right? But also just in our basic training and our, OCS, when you went through selection. So how do you replicate that type of mutual suffering to build that level of team in the corporate sector?
Yeah, I think anytime you can simulate a healthy level of stress, is a good thing, right? So I just work with a big tax company. If you're waiting till tax time to really crank up the pressure on the individual and collective pressure, to then raise their threshold psychologically or as a team, you're too late. You're already behind the power curve, right? And I experienced this in baseball, Scott. Like you and I know this. It's in spades. It's like, hey, you got to train like you fight. It's really hard to replicate the realism of combat at home station. Like we try to do that, in our scrimmages at our combat training centers, but there's no national training center for Johnson & Johnson, right? So how do you do that, right? I think through simulations are really important too. And I'm not saying like necessarily technology wise, but through scenarios to where you're putting your team through the paces towards what they expect, and then you go back and you review it. And I think you could do that like through a 4-phase model, just like we know. You're planning a mission, it's plan, prepare, execute, assess, right? And so if I'm doing an individual simulation that may involve some red teaming, for example, to where they're changing the variables, you're getting you're going through it yourself as a leader with your team, but you're getting an outside look that's playing the devil's advocate, changing the variables in terms of time, intensity, sudden change, challenge, adversity, and then you're pressing pause, and then you're going back and then you're reviewing it, and you're talking about, okay, what was supposed to happen, what actually did happen, what went well, what didn't, right? So I think if you treat it, and then you slowly, and then once you back off, you allow some recovery to happen, and then you do it again, and then you ramp up the variables again. I think just through complexity and through the crunch of time, you can really simulate some stress in your environment, in your work environment, that you otherwise wouldn't get. But we don't do that because it takes a little effort, takes a little planning. It's uncomfortable, and we like to think that we don't have time for that, but the reality is quite something different.
Yeah, it's a challenge.